Hi, I'm Laura,
Hi, I'm Deanne.
And I'm Philippe.
and welcome to our Lymond book club. We are reading Pawn and Frankincense by Dorothy Dunnett, and we're going to cover chapters 16, 17, and 18. Dee will lead our discussion. Before we dive in, any thoughts you guys want to share on these chapters?
Thessalonica died. I was really sad.
So just in the future, when you ask what we want to happen in future chapters, just don't let me speak. Because it's like every time I say something, the very next week, the thing that I wanted to happen gets completely destroyed. So, but it's okay.
You wanted more Salablanca, right?
I almost feel personally responsible for Salablanca's death, even though the book was written like 30 years before I was born. But
yeah, I wanted more Thessalonica too. That was really sad.
yeah, I can't help but feel his character was criminally underused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if she was writing it now, she would have known to like make him a more well-rounded character and not just kill him off like that. But because it's super stereotypical to have like the black character as a servant and then kill them off for like the white character's pain. Yeah.
Like loyal servant. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
I have noticed. I understand that these books were written in the 60s, but I have noticed, especially in this book, some problematic language and problematic situations with people of color. But I mean, it's written in the 60s, so you give it a pass, but it's there, unfortunately.
But like you can like also call it out when you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious that she's pushing back against a lot of stereotypical ideas, but those stereotypical ideas like still weave through the text, like even though she's also pushing back against things. So I think we can really enjoy the way that she's subverting stereotypes while also understanding that the stereotypes are in there and exist, and like both of those things can be happening at the same time.
Yeah, well, or she's subverting some, but she's inadvertently falling prey to others, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as we do.
I will say what I love about these chapters is that we finally get to Constantinople.
Yeah.
And I found all the descriptions so like fascinating. And when I first read it, I was like, this is so different. And like, was this true? And like, it's all true. It's all really accurate. And I loved going there and seeing, you know, museums full of this stuff. And I'll share some pictures later, but I love how she described it.
Yeah, as I was reading these sections and I knew that you'd gone to Istanbul, I was just like, oh, I can't wait to see Laura's pictures of all of this.
Yes, please.
But I think what I loved about these chapters was just it feels like the story is coming together. Like it feels like the story is sort of coalescing into like a single purpose, or I don't know. It just feels like earlier in the story, it was sort of like, let's go to this place and let's go to that place and let's go to the other place and we're going to split apart and we're all different. You know, there's Philippe is on one place and Jarrett and Mutter over here and Lyman's over there. And now it's like everything's coming together and we're focused on a single goal. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to the last third of the book, which is what we have after we finish these. So yeah.
I have to point out that after 4 books of guessing and trying to figure out contextual clues, we finally have an answer to the be-all end-all question of how old is Lymond, unless he's lying.
Yeah.
But I see no reason why he would be in that point. So
we said 24 like 2 years before, right?
Yeah, I would think we were right. We were like early to mid 20s at the beginning of the series of books.
And it was like 2 years before when we were in his age when we were guessing that. So we weren't too far off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty proud of it.
What it means is that he had just turned 16 when he was with Margaret Lennox.
Ugh.
Philippe's age.
Gross.
Bird.
Yeah.
And that he was
What
20
age?
and then turned 21 in Game of Kings. So he was super young in Game of Kings.
Oh my goodness.
So Game of Kings is 5 years ago already?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he definitely did not feel 20, 21 in Game of Kings.
Yeah.
I think in Queen's Play, he felt a little more his age just because of getting lost in, you know, grief and escape and all of that. But yeah.
Why
Oh, he's so young. He's so young.
why don't you think he acted his age in Game of Kings?
No, I don't know if he didn't. It's not that he didn't act his age. It's that I didn't feel his age in Game of Kings. Like I just felt like he was older. But I think part of that is cultural. Like is like a 21st century view on adulthood versus a 16th century view on adulthood, which like to me, a 20-year-old is like still a baby. Like they haven't done anything and they don't really have very many, I mean, a lot of times they don't have very many responsibilities and they're still at like the beginning of their adult journey. But you know, in the 1600s they could be like married with 3 kids and
Yeah.
or 1500, you know, it's just a different perspective.
It definitely, like, you look back, because when you look back at Game of Kings, you look for clues that he was that young, and I think they're definitely in there. There's Christian touching his face and thinking of him as a boy, and there's the part where Richard asks him, "Does Will Scott know how old you are?" And he's like, "What?" But it's because he's only a few years older than Will, if that.
Right.
Yeah, but I think also when she originally wrote it, she conceived him as older, and then she changed it to make him younger. I think there's some stuff in Game of Kings that feels like he's older, like feels like he's closer in age to Richard, for example. That probably carries over from like how she originally conceived it.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, heck, if you'd asked me at the beginning of Game of Kings, I would have said he was like in his early 30s, I think. I mean, you know, with the opening stuff. If you'd made me guess. But
it also
anyway,
he's older than he is. And that he's super traumatized, and so he's behaving like this person who's been through a ton, which we normally think of as a person like at least in their 30s, but he's just been through a lot at a young age.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, speaking of a lot at a young age, let's jump into our various travelers and all the places that they are currently in the story. So we start off in chapter 16 with Aleppo. And this is Jarrett and Marta arriving in Aleppo. And they sort of send out inquiries for the child unsuccessfully. And Marta really wants to go out by herself, and Jarrett really doesn't want to let her. And so they end up going together to a Bektashi order ceremony where some stuff happens. So we can talk about this part. There's lovely descriptions of Aleppo at the beginning of this chapter. Yeah.
So I guess question one is like, what's going on with Marta? Why does she want to go out so badly? Why does she want to go out so badly without Jarrett?
And why does she want to see the like the guy she ends up meeting and get the Shadley, who was the leader of the Saracens of Sava, that they'd driven off on the way to Aleppo. That's who she met. So
I get this like mental image in my head now that like Marta and Gautier are like international spies of some sort.
Well, interestingly, there's a point. Is it in these chapters or previous chapters? I can't remember. There's a point where we're in Gautier's POV, and he says something about like pressing Marta to join him or forcing Marta to join him. Like there's some implication from his POV where she did not want to come on this journey and he made her. So I thought that was interesting, given like all this, what she's doing.
I mean, I think there's a really good context clue of what she does when she goes into these towns alone a little later in the chapter, when Jarrett puts together the fact that she's been sending birds out. She's been sending messages out to people. which I had not picked up on at all. So,
Or she's been receiving birds.
or receiving,
Yeah.
but that she at least has a way of getting messages out to people and communication, her and Gautier both. So, and I think that is definitely one of the things she's been doing when she disappears for however many hours in these towns that they pass by.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very subtle. I was not expecting that. The birds thing. No real
Mhm.
hints.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, but yeah, I was not expecting that either. And like when you think, I don't think that she's in the employ of Gabriel. I don't think that's what's going on.
Mm.
But what her agenda is independent of Lymond or Gabriel, I'm super confused about. I don't feel like I either we've been it's been shown to us and we just haven't picked it up at all, or it hasn't been revealed what it is. So
Yeah, it begs you to ask, who is she working with? Who is she working for?
what is she doing? Why does she keep meeting with all these people? Why does she, like, going back to her dressing up as a boy and heading out like way back earlier in the book? Yeah,
Any guesses?
I don't know. I mean, she knows Kiaya Katum well enough to be involved with her in some way. So I'm guessing that's part of all of this. I don't know if she's trying to get things from Kiaya or vice versa, or some sort of mutual thing. If Kiaya is trying to use her, is it something to do with like the Sultan's plans?
She could be working for the Sultan.
She could be working for the Sultan. She could be working for Dragut.
Mm-hmm.
It could be
Which is all working for the Sultan in some way or another.
right. And maybe it's all the Dom Dudutance's stuff. Maybe like she's the one who's controlling Marta and she has some sort of plan with Kiaya Katum. Like they obviously know each other and have tea together or coffee together so in Lyon. So like maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah. But I mean, I also get this feeling that she sort of learned her craft from Gautier because she's been his assistant in all of these other things, like as a usurer. So like Gautier is also caught up in this. Whatever business they have, whoever they're communicating with, I think they're working as a team or like as a master / apprentice kind of thing.
So you think he's like a spy or some sort
I
of
mean, maybe not exactly a spy, but he trades in information, which is kind of what spies do. So maybe, yeah, a spy.
yeah.
But I don't know specifically who he's spying on. Are they sending information about Lymond to people? Or are they receiving news? Are they trying to figure stuff out for Lymond? Because she does know a lot. I mean, at the end of this chapter, she's the one that says to Jarrett, oh, no, the baby was never here. I also knew the peppercorn was never coming to this town. And I now know for a fact that the baby you seek is in Constantinople. So,
Yeah.
which is jumping ahead, but
Yeah, and then there's it's just I don't know. Like Gautier, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the next chapter, but he does not seem to be engaged in any of this quest except for his one little part, which is escorting the spinet to the Sultan.
Mhm.
Other than that, like he doesn't seem to be into any of it. And he seems to be super annoyed by everything. And certainly not on Lymond's. Like it's sort of like he's not gonna like step out of his way to do anything for Lymond. So, or at least that's what he tells them. So I don't know. He could be lying about that, but
It's quite unpleasant.
What?
He's unpleasant. Also,
He's unpleasant.
Yeah.
I think also notable in this first section of this chapter is Jarrett falling completely head over heels with Marta, because they
Yeah.
spent the day together asking about the kid, and he's seeing her quick-witted, intuitive, articulate, and thoughtful. He had loved her for her beauty and for an excellence with which he was already familiar, aka she reminded him of Lymond. That day, engrossed together in the fate of the child, he met her mind to mind and fell in love with her with every grain of his spirit and cell of his body, with the essential finality of death. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, Jarrett. Like, we know that he gets obsessed. Like, we've known this from the very first moment we were introduced to this character. Like, he is an obsessive person. He gets fixated. Like, we've seen this happen multiple times. He's gotten fixated from his dead fiance forward. So I am unsurprised that he's using this like over the top dramatic language like fell in love with her to the finality of death, you know. Like, of course he did. At the same time, I don't think that it's fake. Like, I think his emotions are real. He's just not good at it.
He's not good at it. Yeah. That's my take on it too, because we see later in this very chapter he's very bad at it. But
yeah. And I mean, it's just the things like things like where he says you know, Marta agrees to go out in like Western dress. And then there's this point where he says it was a stilted surrender and the pricking of his senses should have warned him. As it was, he sent off a cordial message of agreement while reserving blah, blah, blah. And so it's like he's acknowledging in his POV that like, oh yeah, something's wrong here, but I'm going to ignore it and think, and I just wrote to the side, this is his entire problem. Like, it's not that he didn't know that there was something fishy about this whole thing with Marta and him going off and exploring the town. He knew there was something fishy. He had a pricking of his senses, which should have warned him. He had some sort of intuitive thought about this is fishy. And then he just completely ignored it and went on anyway. And yeah, so Jarrett. So yeah, then they go to this ceremony, which had some really beautiful language in it. Like, really gorgeous. I love this bit on 303 where it says, I have put 5 things into 5 things, having all. I have put knowledge and wisdom in hunger. Do not search for them in satiety. I have put riches and contentment with little. Do not search for them in avarice. I have put happiness in knowledge. Do not search for it in ignorance. It's like, oh, that's really good.
I assume it's from the Quran.
Yeah, or either the Quran or the I'm assuming it was in the Quran. It was like there's these lovely just passages that were really beautiful. Yeah, so then they have this ceremony, which seems super dramatic, and one of the participants is the guy who directed them to go into Mahdia, which fishy. So
super fishy.
Super fishy.
So speaking of the ceremony, have you guys had Raki before?
No, I've heard of it, but I haven't had it.
It's so I have a fun story about Raki. The second time I went to Istanbul was with Amy, Cameron, and Amy's friend Shivi. So the 4 of us went to this restaurant where they had Raki on the menu. So we said to the guy, can we have 4 Rakis, please? And he was like, no, I'll give you 2. And so he brought 2 of them, and then they were in these bottles. And so then he pours the bottles around into our little cups, and we're like, great. And we're about to cheers. And he's like, no. And then he pours water, and the water like goes in with the Raki. And it's like 3/4 water and 1/4 Raki. So then we're like, okay, cheers. And everybody cheerses, and we all drink it. And then the 3 of them all go, ah! And I was like,
Oh, no.
love it. It tastes like absinthe. It's that anise kind of flavor that maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
it's very, very strong. And even with our two, like we could not drink it, and I ended up taking it with me in my luggage back to England and bringing it to a party and leaving it there because no one would drink it.
Oh no.
Almost ordered 4.
Yeah.
At least
Wow.
he ordered.
And so they were drinking this like straight.
And Jarrett was chugging it. I'm like, I don't even know how he's
How did he not die of alcohol poisoning?
It's strong.
Oh. Wow. So yeah, then there's dancing, and there seems to be some blood, and there seems to be some semi-naked people maybe dancing, and Jared's getting drunker and drunker and drunker, and like his senses are getting more and more confused, and he pulls Marta into dancing with him, and
Very reluctant Marta.
yeah, very reluctant Marta. She's like, no. And then there's a point where she's crying. Like he pulls her, like he pulls her into dancing, and she's resisting, and there's tears in her eyes, and it says they were tears of rage or of pain. She was rubbing her wrist, but it's all from Jared's perspective. So I don't trust his perspective on judging other people's emotional state. Like, so I don't know. Like maybe she was angry here, but maybe she wasn't.
Well, I took it as he kept grabbing her wrist, and there's even this thing about like he closed his hand on her wrist and pulled, and then later he closed the hand again on her wrist, and he saw she was in pain and was sorry that it was the same wrist, and then he tears her robe open. So I think it's legit that she's crying in pain because he's grabbing her much harder than he intends to. He's actually hurting her. And then he's like pulling her robe open. Like, then this is Marta, right? She's crying in genuine rage and pain, I think.
Yeah, it's really
disturbing.
It's so disturbing.
Yeah, it's super disturbing, and it's horrible behavior on his part, but it's also like he's so drunk that like the next thing he does is drinks more Rocky and passes out on the floor.
Yeah. And interestingly, it says like when she gets his knife, and it says her nearly immaculate Western gown. So he had torn off this overgown that she had on top, but she was fully dressed, and none of what she was fully dressed in was disturbed at all. So that's sort of a point in his favor, I think. I think a little bit, but yeah, he wasn't actually trying to disrobe her. What did you guys think about this line where she says, take your sops, Mr. Blythe, and go back to the schoolroom, said the light, weary voice. For every disingenuous small boy, there is a disingenuous small girl, I suppose, somewhere.
I took it that she confessed that she loved him, but she was being disingenuous. And like, I think she was kind of mocking him for not realizing that like a woman can be disingenuous too, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely assume that she was not being serious. Like he was pouring out his heart in this I love you uber dramatic fashion, and she's just like, and I love you, let's go here. But
yeah, it's an easy way to get a drunk person to settle down by giving them what they want.
Yeah, and I think it's really clear that she got him drunk intentionally because she couldn't get rid of him, but she needed, like, in order to do her secret business in secret, she needed to get rid of him. So it was like her way of getting rid of him, basically.
Then she had to bring him along anyway because she felt responsible a little bit. Like, oh boy, he's like passed out drunk. Because like he ends up waking up in the middle of the night out in like the desert with her as she's doing her business, and he sees her meeting with the Saracens of Saba, Shadley. That's when he sees it happen. So
yep. And then they keep giving him alcohol to put him in a stupor, which works. Yeah. So any more thoughts on this? Like it was
I mean, just that it's complicated, right? Like I feel for Marta because she's got this man manhandling her, but I also feel for Jarrett because she's manipulating him. He's very easy to manipulate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to give her credit, she tried and tried and tried to get out and do her thing without him. And he absolutely refused to accept and acknowledge the fact that she's more than capable of doing her business, as she's been doing the whole time they've been traveling. So
yeah, and he is very like, it's very paternalistic. Like she keeps saying like, "Why? It's none of your business. Let me go do my thing. I've traveled on my own. I do my thing." And he's like, "No, I'm responsible to keep you alive."
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a
if she dies, buddy, like hands off.
Yep.
Right. So then we get to a dissection of a giraffe, which was super gross. And like that sounded terrible.
So yeah, it is historically accurate. There was a Pierre Gilles, and he really did dissect giraffes. And at the time, you know, Western Europeans had never seen a giraffe, so it was like, wow, magical.
I mean, science.
The early days.
And this is the guy that has been brought up a few times before. So
yeah, Archie's hero.
I
so I do love that. What?
I love that Archie's a fanboy.
I know. Well, and I also love this whole scene with Pierre just like grabbing Jarrett. And it's like, you can speak Latin, right? And then he's just like, here, like hands him the notes and the pen, and just like, you don't need me to translate, right? You know? So he's just like dictating all these notes to Jarrett.
And the way that Jarrett's
and then also,
of course I can. Yeah, sure. I'll help you.
Right. And then Pierre just immediately decides, oh, you're coming with me to Istanbul now. Like, it's decided. You will be like traveling, like you're coming with me. It's like, okay, he might have plans of his own.
I find the whole thing hilarious. He's like, he knows what he wants, and Jarrett is just being Jarrett and being so clueless. He just goes along with it. He's like, okay, I guess I'm your note taker now.
Yeah, like I feel like this is actually the kind of people that Jarrett really needs to be around, which is just someone who just tells him what to do. And then he can do, like if you give him a task that he is capable of doing, you know, and it's like, here, I need you to do this thing. And if that thing is within his power to do, I feel like that's a really good thing for Jarrett. Like just give him a task that he can do well and let him do it. And then he'll be proud of having done it, and he'll feel useful, and it'll be good. And that's what happened here. So
in a way, his hero worship thing is kind of good for him because he does need a strong leader, but the problem is he's picking the wrong people.
Yeah. Oh, Jarrett. But this seemed to be a rather benign incident.
Oh, yeah, and it's funny.
Yeah. So and also Pierre here sort of warns him off about Marta and Gautier, which I thought was super interesting. He's like, take my advice, don't meddle with either of them. It's like, what does he know?
Right.
Yeah. Which really makes me wonder, like, what reputation they have in this part of the world. And because Pierre's clearly been around this part of the world quite a bit and traveled and all that. And so what, like, his encountering of Marta and Gautier, like, where did that happen? In what circumstance did it happen? Why does he not trust them enough that he's going to warn a stranger? Like,
well, yeah, and even in this scene, he meets up with Marta, and he's very grumpy, and then he's like questioning Jarrett, like, "Are you friends with her?"
Yeah.
So he's definitely got something against her.
Yep. Yeah. And we find out, as we knew, that Graham Mallet is not dead.
Yeah, I love that he gives like the most like obvious reveal ever. Dun dun dun, Gabriel's still alive, and it's like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Of course, Jarrett being Jarrett is like absolutely shocked.
Right.
Jarrett may be the only one that actually thought he was.
Yeah, this is not a surprise. So then they have this whole section where it's like, we need to go to Chios, like maybe the kids in Chios, and if not, we should go to Constantinople. And then we have this section where we find out about the pigeons, and that Jarrett realizes, it says he has this memory of Marta standing among the Baghdad pigeons in the factor's courtyard at Scanderoon, Gautier fondling Kiaya Khatun's doves in the palace at Djerba. And so he realizes that they've been sending and or receiving messages. Yeah.
Well, and we get the whole reveal that Marta knew the whole time that the peppercorn was not going the way they went.
Right. And Jarrett has this like huge disillusionment situation with Marta, where he thinks of her like the dull contempt in her voice, which is interesting because that's not how her voice was described when she said that take your sops, Mr. Blythe, and go back to the schoolroom, which in the first time she said that, it said the light, weary voice. And then in his memory, it's dull contempt. So it goes from light and weary to dull and contemptuous, which is interesting. Yeah. So he.
I think it's also interesting that this is the second time we have a moment where Marta is kind of happy or joyous or having a pleasant moment, and Jarrett ruins it. The previous one was when she found that with Cupid, and this one it's on 319. She was singing. He had never heard any expression of happiness from her before, much less this joyous uplifting of voice, light and free. He drowned it with his hammering, and when it stopped, it had halted too.
Yeah.
So, and he's really bad at he's really bad at being in love. He just consistently like ruins her day.
Yeah. And he's really mad. Like she got him drunk. Like he knows she got him drunk to get rid of him. She was just placating him. And he assumes from all of that she's working for Gabriel. And she denies it. And I think I believe her. I don't know for sure, but I think I believe her that she's not working for Gabriel.
Why do you believe her?
She's more interesting if she's not working for Gabriel. Like, I think she's a more interesting character. Like if she's working for Gabriel, then her character motivation is obvious and kind of simple. But if she's not, then it's a mystery and it's intriguing, and I like that better. So
agreed.
Yeah.
I don't know who she's working for, but
well, from what she says, she's like, I am alone, every man is my enemy. So she's implying that she's working for herself.
Yeah. And also that whole speech right there where she says, you don't understand, how can you? And it's like her hands are ground together between the fair brows. A single line showed of anger and disgust and a futile perplexity. You don't understand, how can you? You were born into a household with parents and wealth. You knew your friends and your enemies. You knew your position in life, whom you were fighting for, whom you were against. I'm alone, every man is my enemy. And just that idea of like, she doesn't know who's for her and she doesn't know who's against her sounds like just so incredibly stressful. I mean, to live her entire life and to grow up her entire life and not have any sort of foundational knowledge of these people are on my side and these people are not on my side, sounds really horrible. And yeah.
And I think that explains a lot about her behavior and her like uncertainty and her inability to trust people. And like, I also think it's really telling that in the scene after Jarrett passes out from the Rocky, after he like basically assaults her, she stands staring over him for a long time. So there's something going on there. Like, is she just standing over him with rage, or is there more?
And she does say that she knows where the child they're chasing is, and he is at the house of the Nightingales in Constantinople. So, as we know from the character list way back ages ago, we are going to meet people who deal in nightingales, which I have been looking forward to since I read the character list, because I'm like, nightingales are a thing that we deal in? This is very intriguing to me. So, apparently that is where the boy is, unless nightingale is like a euphemism for prostitute, which it totally could be. So I don't know. Yeah,
I think it's also telling that she reveals that Lymond knew the whole time that they were not going to find the kid.
Yeah, and that the reason is, I shall take your disciple Jarrett and he shall be returned to you weaned. So this idea that she's gonna like make him grow up in some way, which that's also, we get the title of the book here on 322, where it says, you treat love like a bird for the table, like a pawn now in frankincense, now discarded and thrown in the dirt. You don't know what love is, either of you, and God help us and you if you ever find out. And so it's like, it's saying that love is the pawn, which that was not a guess that I had made.
Do you think that's true of Lymond and Martha, that that's how they treat love?
No, I don't think. I think Lymond deeply loves people, and Marta, I don't know. I think she wants to love people. I don't know if she can at this point. But
I just think though that Lymond isn't wholly, I guess, absolved from like bad behavior in love, mainly because he doesn't.
Oh, sure.
He doesn't let himself feel it, and he just is like pretending like he doesn't in a way.
I mean, if we're only talking about romantic love, then I think he's got massive hangups. But I think there's a lot more than that, and I think he feels love in lots of ways very strongly.
Which kind of love is
and
Jared
it strongly.
Which kind of love is Jared talking about here?
I mean, I think Jared's talking about romantic love, right? Because that's what he's focused on. Yeah.
From either Lymond or Marta.
Yeah. And it's interesting. God help us and you if you ever find out.
What do you think is going to happen when Lymond finds romantic love?
I don't know.
Is he going to handle it well?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Has he really handled anything well?
I mean, he's got such his he doesn't think he's worthy of love. Like his self-esteem is tanked, and so I can totally see him doing some sort of self-sacrificial, like, this person is better off without me, kind of thing. Who knows? Or he's gonna like take them and hold on to them so tightly it's gonna cause problems. Like, who knows?
Lymond.
And I think also he feels that if he shows his love for people, it's going to end up harming them, because look at what's happened to those he's loved in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, he's probably. Yeah.
I just think that's like the root of his issue. He's afraid of it because he's afraid of losing people, because history speaks for itself.
He's absolutely going to do the whole, like, you're better off without me, self-sacrificial, like, I will, reject this thing because you are better off without me, contaminating your life and bringing you to danger that will come, or something like that. So.
We also have at the end of this chapter another huge reveal that we knew for a very long time. He is my brother.
Kind of known that from the beginning, though.
Yeah. Huge reveal that was not a reveal.
But it's the first time that she admits to it, that it's been admitted at all.
Yeah.
In
And
clear, plain English, they are brother and sister.
And it's probably a huge reveal to Jared, to be honest, knowing Jared.
Probably. Oh, Jared. And we don't go back to them, do we?
Not in these chapters,
Not
no.
these chapters, so we don't know what his response to that is. Oh, okay, that's going to be fun to see what that is. Okay, so that was 16. Any additional thoughts on chapter 16? Okay, we get 17. We are headed to Thessalonica. So basically, Thessalonica, this chapter is sort of broken up into 3 pieces, where they're on the ship for the first section and they sort of have a party with people coming, and there's an attempted murder of Lymond, and we get a reveal that there seems to have been some accidents that have happened. And then the second part is where they go to dinner with another Bektashi person, the Bektashi dervish person, which there's a lot of Bektashi people in these chapters. Like, this seems to be a thing. So I'm intrigued by that. And Anafrian and Salablanca are suspicious that there's these people around. And then the third part is this assassination attempt, and Salablanca dies. Super sad.
Right.
Anafrian definitely redeemed himself. I've been super suspicious of him this whole time, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm not suspicious anymore. He seems to have.
See, and this is where we differ, because now I'm super specific where I wasn't before.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Why? What changed?
And he's meddling. I don't know. I never really saw a reason to think he might be sort of a betrayer or a traitor before, but like, there's a way to read the end of this chapter where you can see Onofrian setting it up so that he, number one, takes out Salablanca and makes himself a lot more closer to Lymond's side, where he can get more information from him and sway him in certain ways.
Okay.
It's super devious, but if
Yeah,
he's
that's an interesting
Gabriel would have devious people working for him. So I don't know, but you know, this is the first time that I've had any doubts about Ziswitz.
That is interesting, especially since we know that Gabriel doesn't want Lymond to die immediately. So saving him would be in Gabriel's best interest.
Yes. And he also removes the one person that really had no outside sort of influence trying to protect Lymond.
Right.
You know?
Right. And Salablanca dies off stage. So we don't know actually what happened. That is interesting. Yeah, I thought he was super sketchy this whole time. Like, why are you here? Like, it just never made any sense to me, like why he was tagging along. So and
it could also just be he was saving his life. You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll find out. But then there's some stuff in the next chapter where he's like meddling behind Lymond's back and like telling de Aramon certain things about him. I was like, why are you suddenly like inserting yourself into these conversations where you never did before? So but we can talk about that in next chapter. So
okay. So we get the opening of 17, which is in Gautier's perspective, which is interesting because have we had his perspective before?
Maybe just a quick flash of it.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, I don't know, but there's quite a bit of it in this chapter, which is interesting. He's super grumpy and not real happy about what's been going on, and when Philippe was following the children of tribute, did she think she was following the same route as the children? I thought she did.
She did, but I think they took an expedited route, right?
Okay, because there's this whole thing. There's sort of an offhand comment about how the route Philippa had taken with her group of young men was different, and I was like, did she know that? Did they take her on some wild goose chase somewhere? But that makes sense. They went some way a little faster or something.
Yeah, they basically like took a ship or something. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Lymond talks to the bride from that Philippa gave her shoe buckles to that she is wearing as earrings, which is cute.
It's probably super heavy.
It's cute. And we meet Mikhail.
Again.
He's back.
Yeah, again. So suspicious. And like he sort of lets them know what's going on with Philippa, and he tries to seduce Lymond, although that's a little bit later. Fairly aggressively, actually. I was like, whoa.
He's like overcome by his beauty. Like when he first sees him, he's like, "Oh, Philippa never told me that you were unavailable." That's what he says.
Well, he's like, Philippa never told me that you were super hot, and then he's like, but I'm not available.
Yeah.
Also, this is interesting because we were in Philippa's point of view before, and we didn't really get that Mikhail is so beautiful. But now that we're seeing him from adult eyes, it's like, wow, that guy's beautiful.
So good looking. Yeah. And I love this comment he made. So finally, Lymond and him have this sort of back and forth about where is Philippa, and she's in the harem, and Lymond is like, where is she? Like he gets to the point where he's just like, tell me where she is. And he's like, she's in the harem. It's like, oh Christ, is his response. It's just so funny. And then I love this bit where Mikhail says she will live like a queen in her own country. She has no husband, no riches, no palace. And Lymond says, you are perfectly correct, said Lymond. It would also be hard to find 3 possessions she would find more ridiculous. So the idea that, you know, a husband, riches, and a palace, or Philippa's just like not into any of that.
It's like the first time he shows that he knows her. I mean, he does seem to know her because he knows, you know, Kate, but like he sees her as this little child.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he knows something about her personality here.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, and Gautier does not come off very good in this scene. He's super critical of his fellow travelers and kind of racist and super racist and a jerk and all of that. Yeah.
So back to Gautier, I'm just looking at what I've highlighted. One of the things I highlighted was that we know him from before. He helped Lymond in Queensway. And here he's thinking it was against his will at the behest of the old woman whose word was his will. And that he'd also apparently followed the Dom's will a 3rd time. He had done so when he had compelled Marta to come on this voyage with him, but that was the end. And what he did here was no one's concern but his own. So basically he only helped Lymond out of being ordered to by the Dame de Dutance, and he really doesn't care about him at all.
No, and now that she's not around, he's like, he doesn't exactly have to do what she says because she's not here. So, yeah.
And there's
but I also believe him when he says he's not the one been causing accidents on the ship.
Right, because Lymond
he hasn't been.
Lymond flat out accuses him. You believe him? Why do you believe him?
I do. I just don't. I don't think he cares one way or another about Lymond. You know, I think I for some reason I trust Gautier when he says I'm not the one that's been doing this. It's because I think it's an Onofrian now. So.
Although I do feel like his justification is super sketchy because he says, ask yourself, if I wished you harm, why would I have taken such pains to preserve you as I did when you were injured at Blois? But he was, or Blois, however you say that. First of all, that was a long time ago and things could have totally changed. Like just because he helped him years ago in France does not mean that he's helping him now. And also, if he was under duress and helping him under duress, then it doesn't mean anything for his motivations now. So I don't know. I'm not saying I think that he's causing the accidents either, but I don't think necessarily. I definitely believe him when he says, I would do nothing to stop it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Honest. Which sort of makes you believe him when he says he's not the bad guy, because he's like, you know, but I don't care about you and I wouldn't help you.
Yeah, and that's part of it. But I also wouldn't be surprised to find out it has been him doing it at some point later in the book. There's somebody on the ship, and chances are it's not just some unnamed person that we haven't seen before, because that's just sloppy writing.
Yeah,
So.
I think it's an Offrian. I do.
You were exonerating an Offrian a second ago.
I know, but no, Philippe convinced me back. He convinced me back. I was like, I've been suspicious the whole time, and then I was like, oh, but he saved him. But no, I think you're right. I'm back on the suspicious train.
Because he's super ready. Like, once Salablanca is dead, he comes right in and stabs the guy, and he's like, oh, I ran to get the guards. Like, I was aware this is going to happen. It's like, I purposely sent Salablanca into the room with you to help guard, because I knew that there were going to be assassins sneaking into your room that would lead you into this ambush. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a pretty clever plan if it really was a plan, and it involves a lot of luck and a lot of things happening exactly the way they needed to happen. But we've seen Gabriel have these kinds of plans that work.
Say, it's not like we haven't seen plans like this before. Like, we're like, there's like 15 moving parts and they all have to come together. So I do think it's funny Lymond is talking to Mikhail, and he says I think that sometime I must introduce you to a gentleman called Jared Lymond. And I sort of loved that, like, oh, that will be an interesting meeting.
I think Mikhail would probably want to get in bed with him too.
Oh, for sure, because Jarrett's super handsome, as we know.
And Jarrett would probably be attracted to him and also, like, horrified.
Freak out.
Internalized homophobia.
Terrible of me. Is it really terrible of me that I want that? I want Mikhail to just, like, super come on to Jarrett and just see what he did.
It might still happen.
Could happen.
I mean,
also there's something. So we were talking about Mikhail before, and like, is he suspicious? And he says something in this one where he tells Lymond that Marino Donati is dead, and Mikhail says, "Good riddance," cheerfully, and blew an extravagant kiss, and the sister too. So like, he's very blasé about these people just dying, and he's also very blasé about Philippa. He's like, you know, I kept her alive, I kept her safe, but I'm not a fighter, so I let her go into the harem naturally. It's fine.
I also was curious about this phrase where Mikhail's voice was gentle. You will use the name of France to redeem your son and the maiden, to redeem these two children, said Lymond concisely, again with the Philip as a child in his eyes. I would use the names of Prester John and Antiochus Tibertus, and even that of Gazelle Kiaya Khatun. Who is she? Said Mikhail. You must ask her next time you meet her, said Lymond, and lifted his eyebrows as Mikhail got to his feet, which makes me suspicious that Mikhail is working for her. And Lymond knows it. That he said, like, you must ask her the next time you meet her. It seems to imply that he's met her before. That's like, I don't know. And that's when they get hit with a flaming mast that falls from the sky.
Well, there's also a part in the next chapter with Philippa thinking about Mikhail and who he's loyal to. I guess we'll get to there. But it does sort of make sense, right? Philippa gets sent to wherever she was sent, and like Mikhail is there waiting for her basically, and like immediately joins with her.
True.
And who sent her there?
Yep.
And Gazelle even tells her then, she's like, the Dame du Tutants really wanted to see you in the Seralia. That was sort of the plan this whole time. So I
totally question.
Yeah. Why? Why are we doing this? Like,
I don't know, but if that was the plan the whole time, then Mikhail definitely was working for them. But I was assuming he was working for Gabriel, but I don't think that's the case.
No, I think he's working for Kiaya Khatun.
But
and I think Lymond knows it.
Why would a
Oh
friend?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, why would Lyman ask that question? I mean, he's digging, right? He's digging with Gautier a minute later as well. He doesn't know for sure, but this is certainly what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Well, and he's interrupted by the falling mast before he can get a clear answer from McCall. So
yeah.
So speaking of the falling mast, who's trying to kill who here? What do you think?
I mean,
Lyman talks about the other incidents happening sort of to him, because he gets on the ship that's leaving for the ground and it almost sinks. And the tar, like there's a tar barrel that was unstrapped, although I'm not sure if that was specifically towards him, but it could have been an accident that came his way. So there's just things that shouldn't be happening on the ship, that, you know, the ship is falling apart in a way that it never really was until this last leg of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's an assumption that the falling mast is to kill Lyman and or Mikkel. Was anyone else standing nearby? Like, where was Salablanca during all of this? I don't remember.
I don't know if it says, but it does say the other two attacks were before Mikal arrived.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah. So if it's against Lyman, it would seem odd for it to be, if we think Anafrian caused the whole assassin thing to get in Lyman's good graces and kill Salablanca, it seems weird for these accidents to have been caused by the same person, because I mean, a ton of flaming wood falling on you will probably kill. Like, the odds of Lyman escaping that alive are not huge. I mean, obviously he does, but so I don't
unless in a truly Machiavellian way, all of these accidents weren't ever really meant to kill him, but just to meant to make Lyman think that someone was after him.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's going a couple levels deep, but
yeah, because the mass thing, like, it basically implies the way it's written that like they barely escaped being crushed, and they only escaped because they heard, like, they were able to hear something in time and like jumped out of the way. But yeah, who knows? Okay, so
did you summarize to the end already? I don't know how far I can go.
Yeah, we summarized to the end of the chapter. So basically they're gonna have the dinner, and then they're gonna have Anafrian and Salablanca are sort of suspicious, and then they're gonna have the assassin, and then they're gonna get back on the ship.
So we didn't talk about how Lymond is now the French ambassador to Turkey.
Yeah, Lymond is now he got a huge promotion,
which he doesn't want, but I guess maybe it'll help save the kids.
Yeah. That's
yeah, he finds that out right before going to dinner, right?
Yeah, because they give him the wrong title and he's like, that's not me, and they're like, oh yes it is.
Surprise.
Yes, surprise. Yeah, my felicitations. Like, happy. So it's an unsought but magnificent honor, Lyman says dryly. Oh yeah, so then they explain why he's the new ambassador, which I don't think is actually all that important. Like, he has the title now, and yeah. So they had this dinner. I didn't really underline too much in the dinner. They find out that there's the new master of the Grand Knights, who is Claude de Lasingo.
Is that just Villette? No.
It
is Villette.
No, it's Longo. Yeah, so we're still not to Jean de Villette yet, but it will happen eventually.
Juan de Homedes is dead. Yay!
Wait, what?
I said, but yay, Juan de Homedes is dead.
Yeah. So we have interim Grandmaster for the moment. And then then we've got this really interesting bit where they're having dinner, this eunuch is offering Lyman something, etc. It's the last thing before Anafrian and Salablanca saw before they were politely dismissed. On the surface, nothing was wrong. on the surface, two clever, subtle intelligences, etc. But Anafrian was uneasy. Actually, I think this is why I let down my guard with him, because we're in his perspective here, and he was he was uneasy by this, and so I took that to mean that he was nervous about Lyman's safety, but maybe he's nervous about something else.
Or maybe it's just an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
She's unreliable as a narrator, but like she never lies to you. He must be nervous about something.
Yeah. He's uneasy about something.
So there's an interesting exchange he has right after that with Salablanca, where they're talking about one of them staying in the room with Lymond, and Salablanca says he will, and then it says an expression of lofty distaste crossed Mr. Zitwitz's face. I'm sure you will, customs being what they are. I don't suppose he'll be expected to warm his own bed either. Meaning he's gonna like have someone he's sleeping with.
Mm-hmm. I read it.
And then Salablanca says, Monsieur's integrity is, I am certain, inviolate. And for a moment, Monsieur Zitwitz, who never gossiped with his inferiors, looked at him. Then holding his counsel, he turned and plodded away. So there's like a whole bunch buried in there. He thinks of Salablanca as his inferior. He thinks there's something going on with Lymond that's worth gossiping about.
Yeah. And he thinks that Lymond is going to be sent someone to have sex with, basically, and he finds it distasteful, which is not untrue. Like, Mikhail shows up, and like it does happen. Mm-hmm. And he's judgy about the culture that he's visiting, which would be, I mean, that makes sense for who he is and where he's from. But yeah, it's and Salablanca is just so supportive, and it's like,
I miss him already.
Lymond really needed somebody. Like, once Salablanca's gone, he's surrounded by Anafrian, Gautier, and a bunch of strangers, basically. He's got nobody. Jared's not there, Archie's not there, Philippe is not there.
Yeah, he's got nobody on his side, which honestly is narratively okay. So I'm annoyed that Salablanca died because he's a good character and I find him interesting. Narratively, however, it's a great choice because it leaves Lymond alone without anyone to depend on, and he doesn't have anyone to watch his back. So, and we as the reader are like much more tense because Lymond's back is unprotected and in this situation. So it was actually a good choice narratively to kill him in terms of making our protagonist in much more danger, but I still wish he hadn't died. Like, I don't know. Anyway.
I think that she could have structured it differently, where she doesn't like kill off one of the only named Black characters, and the other one is Keddy, who she also kills off like instantly. So.
Like, he could have been sent off on an important mission and had to go far away for something, and like, why not? So then we do
oh, you go ahead. You want to keep summary?
So anyway, we just get this scene with Mikhail attempting to seduce Lymond, which Lymond was very kind about saying no. Like, he was super like, yeah, you're really beautiful, but
may that light be exalted light, but with another.
Yeah. Also, I thought this was interesting where Mikhail says, I ask for no apology, I ask nothing but kindness, which what he's asking for is sex. So kindness here meaning sex. And Lymond replies, I have learned that kindness without love is no kindness, which I thought was an interesting statement.
What do you think when do you think he learned that, and how?
I mean, he was certainly learning it when he was Tatty Boy. Right? I mean, just that how incredibly depressed he got through that whole section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of it
I
as
think
because I think the word kindness is interesting. It doesn't just mean casual sex. It's like specifically here, it's like sex with kindness, but not with love, which makes me think of Una. Like he was very kind to Una, but he wasn't in love with Una, and that all went to hell very badly. And we know, and I don't know if he knew, but maybe he did from this, that she did fall in love with him, and that just hurt her more.
Yeah. That's no kindness. And then we get some explicit, like, basically Mikhail asks him, you know, are you heterosexual? He's like, is your love given to women? And he says, he doesn't really answer the question. He says, no one. It's not given to anyone, which is a non-answer. So that's
But
interesting.
Mikhail catches that, you know, there's a breath of delay. So he's like, oh, there is someone, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's a delay, but then Lymond like says it again with no trace of hesitation this time. My love is given to no one, to neither man, woman, or child. Duty, friendship, compassion I do owe to many, but love I offer to none. So here he's talking more than just like romantic love, because he says, mentions a child, right? He's like claiming that he doesn't love this child that he's trying to get to. Maybe he doesn't. He hasn't met the kid yet. But also seems to be like doubling down on this idea that he doesn't feel love.
And I don't think it's true at all. Like, I think this is just him. This is just Lymond trying to put up emotional barriers and distance between him and other people, because he doesn't feel like he can offer people anything like of emotional substance, and he feels like he's a danger to people, and people just get hurt and killed when they're around him. And so he's like, I don't love anybody. And it's totally not true. Like, he definitely loves people. And I just want to say, oh.
I think also, like, if you think back to the end of Queen's Play, he said he's never going to get married. So he's kind of always had, or since we've known him, he's had kind of this hesitation. But he's also done like casual sex, right? He had casual sex at the start of this book, even. And I feel like there's a combination of things that's making him put up more walls, specifically now. The Aga Murat experience, he's been very traumatized by sex. Maybe he would have slept with Mikhail in this moment, like he slept with that woman in the beginning, but after this horrible, like, abusive relationship, he doesn't want it at all. And then also the child that he's going to all his effort for, like the child is a result of casual sex. So again, like he must be like no casual sex, you know?
Yeah. Yep. And then we find out how old he is.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Finally.
There you go.
Also very telling that he flinches when Mikhail kisses him on the cheek.
Yeah.
And Lymond, like, he's so unexpressive. He never like is gonna flinch. So the fact that he flinches in this moment, like, Mikhail really got to him. He was very present and engaged and open in this conversation.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I think you're right that speaks back to this rape that he endured multiple times with the Aga Murat just recently, and just that Mikhail kisses him and he just has like a flinch back from that, I think. Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't comment also on the line about music, because music in this is like a metaphor for love also. He says, Mikhail says, I have played with you. And Lymond says, I know it isn't that music doesn't matter, the reverse as it happens. So my defenses against it are very strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I underline that as well. Just that, yeah. And we know that he has issues with music, that he isn't playing music and isn't.
He can't stand to hear it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to play it. Which I think it'll be interesting when music comes back into his life. I think that will be a very interesting point. Perhaps not in this book. But...
I I feel like music here is it's love, but it's also like human feeling. Like he's walling himself off from human feeling. And it's flat out, he says, you know, it's not that it doesn't matter, the reverse. He feels his feelings so incredibly deeply that he can't let himself experience them because he can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I noticed this time that I missed before is that they're in the same place that Philippa was when she first found the kid with the trays of peach jam outside the window.
Oh, yeah. I did not notice that.
It's mentioned twice. Once is on 335 at the bottom. He's looking out the window on a little courtyard with flat trays, dark and aromatic. And then later on during the fight scene, they're like running through peach jam.
There you go.
Oh yeah, here it is. And Salablanca following heard him say, "Mind the jam, mother naked, streaming with peaches and gore, the wounded assassin runs away."
Mind the jam.
Mind the jam. Oh.
Also, something to point out that this is where Gabriel's assassin took care of Evangelista Donati. So the fact that, you know, Lymond shows up in the same place and is almost assassinated could just be the work of Gabriel.
Yeah.
Not Onofrion or Gautier or whoever is the traitor on their ship. So
that's true.
Yeah, it's very possible.
That's very true.
And what do you think of, or go ahead. But what do you make of Lymond's reaction when he thinks he's about to die, where he just laughs and says, "And so it was all for nothing at all, and who is to care?"
I mean, I think it's just a sign of his, like, he just has despair and just feels like this sense of uselessness, you know, and that like all of this is for nothing. And there's this like macabre, like the laugh, I think is a macabre, sad, desperate like laughter. And
he's
and of course,
go ahead.
I should say, of course, many people will care. So
yeah,
not
the least of whom is the reader.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it's also just this like super intense, scary moment, and he tends to have these like hysterical reactions because he's also laughing later, right after he realizes he's gonna live.
Yeah, and this was quite a dramatic fight scene. I mean, it's because we know that Lymond is an excellent street fighter and an excellent swordsman, and he loses. Like he loses the fight.
He's overwhelmed. There's like
completely overwhelmed.
Probably like 10 or 11 people after him.
Yeah.
After they take care of Salablanca.
Yeah. So
no matter what you see in movies, there's no way one man is going to win up against 11 men with swords.
No, there's two.
Feasible. So.
Yeah. So then Onofrion saves him.
I think it's really telling that as soon as he gets over his like moment of hysteria of not being dead, he can't stop thinking about Salablanca. And he also is like beating himself up instantly. He's beating himself up that it's his fault. Thinking to himself like, he says, ruffled more than he would admit by a trying episode with an importunate boy, meaning Mikal, had ignored Salablanca's presence and given him neither instructions nor thanks. If he had, that first would-be assailant would never have left his bedroom alive. I sort of think he's wrong here. No matter what he said to Salablanca, the thing probably would have played out similarly, but, you know, whatever. It's Lymond, he's got to beat himself up.
But he has to blame himself. Yeah, he's got to blame himself. Like, no matter what happens and no matter what choices people make, it's like his issue is that it has to be his fault, you know, and that he is responsible for all of this destruction around him. And sometimes he is, you know, like sometimes he makes bad choices, but you know, it's like, it's also I sort of feel also that his determination to blame himself in the face of everything is also kind of taking agency away from other people. You know, that they have chosen to be in those spaces, and they've chosen to take those risks, and like they see him as worthy of taking those risks for, but he does not. And at the end, and like Mikhail, of course, doesn't help with that final phrase of duty, friendship, compassion, which moved him to die for you. Oh, like that's just the worst thing to say.
Well, I think what Mikhail is trying to get at is, you know, it wasn't any of those things that you say you can feel. It was love, which you say you can't feel. And I feel like it's a jibe at Lymond refusing to open himself up to love, because this person, you know, died for him for love, is what Mikhail is implying.
Yeah. And yet I'm not sure Lymond is in a place to hear that, like at all. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit like, if other people love you, you owe them love in return. Or if love inspires someone to great acts, like you should let yourself feel it. But yeah, he's not really in a place to feel that, like to deal with that.
I don't know. So final thoughts on Thessalonica?
Peach jam.
It's just sad. I'm tired of people dying for Lymond or because of Lymond.
Welcome
But
to the Lymond Chronicles.
It's going to keep happening. I have no doubts that the end of this book is going to be tragic in some way. So
Yeah.
I just don't want to know how. We're going to get there eventually. So
It was really striking to me when we were reading Queensplay how like not tragic it is. It's how it's like so fluffy in comparison to the later books.
We got lured into a false sense of safety in Queensplay. Oh my goodness.
I mean, Dunnett sets the tone early with characters and dying with Christian Stewart. So
True.
Okay, so chapter 18, we have Constantinople or Istanbul. As
finally get there.
We get there, yay! I've been wanting to go here for like 3 books. So basically we have sort of another 3 sections to this chapter, the way we had 3 sections to the last chapter. There's Philippe in the Harem, and then we have on board the ship coming to Constantinople, and then we have once Lymond arrives in Constantinople, he has a discussion with the old ambassador, Diamond, and they explore the city. So let's look at the harem section first. So Philippa arrives in, well, the first thing we get is her writing letters to Kate, which is just delightful. And I mean, it's so practical. She's like, here's a recipe for something. You probably can't find the ingredients, but maybe, maybe Charles can get them in Newcastle. Or and then she's also, it's just so funny.
Well, the way she opens it, which is so practical and matter of fact. As you will see from the address, I am staying as a concubine in the harem of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent.
Like, hi, Mom.
At all.
Yes. Your 16-year-old daughter is stuck in a harem with absolutely no ability to leave. Hope things are well. Yeah, and then she says, like, you'll be glad to know I am keeping well, thanks to a lot of exercise and a good leucine sherbet the first day. It's just like, I'm doing fine. Stuck here in the harem, but life is good.
I mean, I think it's, it's super funny, but it's also like Philippa holding on to her individuality and her culture and her family and her relationship to her mother and like all the things that make her Philippa in this super foreign situation that she's found herself in without any allies.
Yeah. Which also I'm intrigued with the idea that I doubt she's sending these letters. So is this like a journal that she's writing basically to her mother?
Yeah, remember in the previous chapter she got a diary? So this is writing the letters in her diary.
Yeah, it's just letters in her diary. So while she's talking to her mother, it's really just the Kate in her mind, and yeah.
It just makes
I
you
agree.
wonder if one day Kate's ever going to read these things and what in the world is she going to think.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I know, me too.
But I also love
Kate will have to laugh to find out her daughter was a concubine for the Sultan Suleiman.
I also love how when Philippa leaves this, before she runs away, she writes a large adolescent ha ha under the foregoing. She's such a teenager.
It's like LOL. Here I am. I also love that this little boy calls her Flippy.
Fippy.
Flippy.
Fippy.
Oh, Fippy. Fippy. Yeah. Not Flippy. Fippy. Fippy. Fippy.
Flippy was a nickname for me for a while.
Oh.
Right. You and Philippa, you have the same name, just the
We
gender.
do. We have one letter difference.
Yep.
She's got an A, I've got an E.
It's true. Yeah, so then we just get her sort of interaction with this little boy, and he's gotten dirty, and she's gonna give him a bath, and then we find out their journey, sort of how it's she's got this toddler that has had his routine stripped away from him, which I thought was a super interesting little bit about raising toddlers. And just about how Dunnett goes into the fact that like they need a routine, and if little kids don't have a routine, they get very, very stressed. And Philippa like trying to figure out his routine and trying to give him a new routine, like even though they're in a different place. And then interestingly, his longing for home. Like where is that? What does he want?
Right, and Philippa concludes that it's the Donati's house, because that's like the only thing she thinks of that he could remember.
Yeah. Is that it? Like,
yeah, I think there's this great insight into children here, and this great like depth that's told in like a funny way, but it actually, like you said, it actually hits this sort of like one of the core like emotional things that affects human beings, where she starts out talking about how he was still on a ship, and his meal was late and different and in different bowls, like, oh no, his meal's in different bowls. But then it gets to this really like heartfelt, like he's longing for home, and what is his home. And then you see why Philippa puts herself through all this. She can't let this little boy be alone. And we see the other little boy who is alone, and how awful that would be.
Yeah. Like this moment where she does leave him alone at one point, because she's just making it worse. Like he's looking at her and screaming. And so she says she sat listening in the next chamber, the tears making unnoticed furrows in her own dirty face, powerless to help. And you can just feel that, like if you've been around a kid who's upset and you can't fix it for them, like what it is. And that whole thing about meals in different bowls, like that's such a thing, right? That you have a toddler, and if they have like a spoon that's their spoon, or a cup that's their cup, and you try to give them a different one, it's like the world has ended. So it is funny, but it's also so true. And of course his world has been turned upside down multiple times in very real ways. And
I think you also, again, you have like contrast with that other child, the one who doesn't have a Philippa, where you have Philippa thinking about what his home was, and how for Madame Donati he had love, and the result, he was quick and happy by nature and affectionate. So the impacts of love on this child compared to the other child is like very obvious.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how Philippa's going to react when she's given the fact that this may not indeed be the child she's looking for, that she's been doing all of this and like basically giving up her life for Gabriel's child. I really want to see how she reacts to that.
I mean, I'm not sure she's gonna. I feel like Philippa is so practical. Like, I don't know if she's gonna care. Like, I mean, I think she'll care in the sense that she'll be sad that she missed this other kid, but I don't think she'll feel bad about the fact that she saved this kid. Like,
no, I don't think that either. But I think she'll still be valuable. She'll still be glad for what she did for this child. It won't change her affection for the child.
Yeah. I would be surprised.
Yeah. I want to see how I want to see how she reacts to it. So,
Yeah.
which I'm sure she'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. So then we get this whole section describing her entry into the harem and just the descriptions of what it looked like and the building and walking through like places with screens so that no one can see them because they're hidden. And there's a point where sort of at the end of this, where it says, this is at the bottom of 349, where it says she meets these women, these girls, and realizes like this is going to be her life. And she says, and in their company, the whole of her life from this day onwards must be spent, the whole of her life from the age of 16. And so she's just kind of looking into this future that is very, very confined and unfamiliar. And that was a good moment.
Yeah, you do certainly feel that it's a sacrifice no matter how much she loves this kid. And even she like has little moments of doubt, and then she's like, no, I have to be there for him. Going back a little bit, on 344, she's thinking about Lymond, and she thinks that besides being a professional mercenary, he was highly educated, had become plain by degrees to Philippa. So she's continuing to reassess her thoughts on Lymond. And then this is where we get this sort of history of Constantinople, which is all, accurate. A couple things that are just interesting is that we think of Constantinople as the capital of the Byzantine Empire, but that's a later historical term. At the time, they just called it the Roman Empire, and the capital had moved from Rome to Constantinople. So if you were living at the time, this really was the capital of the Roman Empire for a long time. And then we were talking before about when did it become Turkish, and the answer in the text from Lymond is 100 years ago, meaning like literally 100 years from 15, whatever that we're in, right?
1400.
1450 something.
Yep.
Okay.
And we have a few references to the Church of Saint Sophia, which is the Hagia Sophia, the famous. Yeah. And I will, when I show my pictures later, I'll show you my pictures of the Hagia Sophia. But yeah, so it was a Justinian's church that he built, who was a Roman emperor. And then it became like, devastated. They turned it into a stable is what it says in here. Then it became a mosque. Then in the early 20th century, I believe, it became a museum. And then I think last year it became a mosque again.
Oh.
So very fascinating history in this place.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we skipped over Tulip. So we have
with his Cockney accent in this little child from Egypt.
This little kid who's like 8, I think, speaks English with a Cockney accent. And
super funny.
Sweet. Yeah.
A few more things in the text that I'll show pictures of. We have a reference here, and then also later when Lymond comes in, to sailing in through a long harbor creek called the Golden Horn. The Bosphorus with the shore of Asia receding behind. You can see all that if you're in Istanbul. And then the description of wreathed with cypress, bossed with the golden fruit of her domes and the sunlit stalks of her minarets. So if you've ever seen the skyline of Istanbul, there's moss everywhere. So there's all these domes and minarets, like the whole skyline is full of that. And if you watch the sunset, it's just like this speckles of like domes and minarets. It's really pretty.
wow.
And then there's this reference to the white roofed houses of Pera, and the French ambassador's house is up there. And that is, actually, I should show you guys a map. Would that help?
Yeah.
All right, I'll show you now.
Just give all the pictures.
Well, no, I want to do the pictures at the end because I have a bunch and people can like stop watching if they don't want to look at the pictures.
Who doesn't like pictures?
Here we go. I'll share my screen. All right, look at the Hagia Sophia, like right there. All right, so Istanbul now is like this big area, but the part that they're referring to as Istanbul is this part, which is the old Constantinople part. And then the part that they're referring to as Para and Galata is this part, which is like was the European part where like all the Europeans were, and that's where the French embassy is. And then this part, which is technically in Asia, I think didn't become part of Istanbul until later, so they never talk about it in this book, right?
Is that the river that separates Europe and Asia from Turkey? Because there's part of Turkey that's in Europe and part that's in Asia.
Yeah, and Istanbul like is between the two. Yeah, so this side is Asia and this side is Europe. The right is Asia, the left is Europe. And then if we zoom in, there's bridges here now, but I don't think there's any references to the bridges in the book, so they probably weren't there at the time, and there was probably people taking boats across. But basically now, like this is the super touristy area because this is where all the really old stuff is. And then over here is more modern, and there's like lots of cool trendy shops and tattoo parlors and, you know, makeup and whatever. And then Topkapi, where the harem is here. It's on this like spit of water, spit of land that goes like around, surrounded by water. I think it's like around here basically. So when they're talking about like the views from top, here it is, here the views from Topkapi, it's like all these views of water.
Where was it?
It's here.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Here. It's a big like complex basically.
Oh, okay.
And all this stuff, like all this famous historical stuff, is all really close to each other. So Topkapi's here, Archaeological Museum here, Hagia Sophia here, famous mosques all around here. And yeah. So anyway, I'll show pictures later, but I hope this helps.
Yeah,
that helps.
Oh, and here's the old hippodrome of when it was the head of the Roman Empire, and it's like a park now, but this obelisk is still here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so historically interesting.
Yes. Okay, so now I lost where I was. So we're in the harem, and Philippa has to go meet. She has to go meet the chief of the black eunuchs, and then she meets. Yeah, I continue.
Surprise!
Surprise!
Back again.
I love, by the way, I love that Philippa's reaction is anger. She knows she's been used here, and she's mad.
Yeah. I mean, justifiably so. By the way, something completely random that has nothing to do with the story, but I thought it sounded so fun, is that they are frying something in honey. And I'm like, oh, that sounds delicious. Instead of frying something in oil, we're gonna fry it in honey. Like, so it makes me want to do that. But
there's also a little detail. There's one of the girls that she meets is on tall velvet pattens, playing this game, and Kuzum goes over and is like, "Is that a mint shoe?" And Philippa says they're stilts to keep her nice slippers dry. And I saw these kind of shoes. They're like old-fashioned looking, like very weird, like high heel shoes, but like not a pointy high heel, like a flat high heel,
like a platform shoe.
Yeah, like a platform shoe. In one of the museums when I was in the Harem, like they actually had an example of these shoes. I was looking for pictures, I couldn't find one of that, but I thought it was really cool that it's in the book, and then I saw it there.
Yeah. And we also get another sign of just how, I mean, we know how influential Kate is on Philippa, of course, but the way that she always brings up her mother's wisdom when she's stressed out is delightful. So there's another point where she says she's meeting this man who's going to have so much power over her life. And she says, she followed, shakily enough, Kate's universal dictum, when in doubt, curtsy.
Yeah. And it comes up again when she's getting her Turkish bath and the other girls are making fun of her, and she's like thinking Kate's advice on how to deal with bullying.
Yep, you can do 4 things.
This is the side.
You can do, yeah, so good.
She also gets a new name, Dur-e-Bacht, or Pearl of Fortune.
Yeah.
Which is really scary. They're like, you're not allowed to use your language. You're not allowed to have the same name. Like, this is all really fascinating, but it's like Kuzum's longing for home. It's like all the things of her home are being taken away from her.
It's also super interesting that Kiaya Khatum, who is part of this system and a power player in this system, is also telling her to subvert the system and giving her all of these, like, don't let them know you can speak Turkish, don't let them know this. And it's just like, why are you doing this? Like, I'm so intrigued by this woman. And yeah. So anyway. Is it a power play between her and the wife? Like, but that seems odd because she's so important to Dragut, and Roxolana is like obviously more powerful than her, but is she in direct competition with her? Like, it seems, I don't know. I'm very confused.
Thinking also about what she wants, she says, I really cannot remember what I hoped for the boy. Oh, she's telling you there. But the Dame de Dutance, I remember, was most insistent that you should by some means enter the Seraglio. She thought, I believe, that you would benefit by the experience. What do you think? What?
So, I don't know. I don't know why Philippa has been used like such a pawn in this. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, and Philippa's just like, oh, really? Well, since I got in so easy, I should be able to get out so easy, right? Today.
Not going to benefit from the experience if you're only there for a day.
Yeah.
We also have here the bit about Mikal, where she's wondering what had happened to Mikal. A creature of Gabriel surely would have killed her prior to destroying the child. Or enlightenment broke on her. Did Mikal have not a master, but a ... mistress, such as Kiaya Hatun?
Yep. Yeah, and then she gets this, you know, not only is she saying fake your ignorance of Turkish, but also there's this super humiliating, invasive examination that we're just not going to do, and so you need to lie that and say that we did it. And that seems really compassionate in a, like, and maybe she's just trying to get Philippa on her side, like, hey, I'm on your side, I'm going to save you from these terrible things. And is she going to manipulate Philippa by having things said in Turkish around her, knowing that Philippa will think that she can trust it? I don't know. Like, how deep is her game?
that is the question.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a really good Philippa moment here where Kiaya Hatun tells her, you know, not to let on that she speaks Turkish, and she says, you will be taught it, of course, but it is an extremely difficult language to learn. Philippa, who had not found it so, opened her mouth, thought, and shut it again. Yeah. So Philippa is catching on. She's finally starting to be able to, like, play politics. She's not going to be a pawn forever.
Yeah. And I love that we have had these glimpses throughout the book of her thinking before she speaks, and thinking, you know, like running through scenarios in her head before she says something. And I think in previous instances, it hasn't actually worked out as well because she doesn't really know what to do, you know, even though she's trying to be thoughtful. And but here we're starting to see, like, you're right, we're starting to see like her having enough wisdom to go along with that. And yeah,
she's getting there. All the stuff about Roxolana also is historically true. Roxolana was a Russian slave girl who became the first, you know, slave girl from the harem to marry the Sultan in 150 years, or maybe the first ever to marry him. And then this is the first one in 150 years that he took a wife, since he can have his choice of the women in the Seraglio. So Roxolana is an interesting character too. I wonder if we'll meet her.
Well, you know for a fact whether we do or not.
You wonder. I wonder. I
think.
Yeah.
Because we were like, oh, are we going to meet Suleiman? But like, the lore we're being given is Roxolana here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we get this really, it's kind of a sad scene of her being cleaned and these girls like mocking her, and she can understand what they're saying.
you skipped the surprise. Mr. Crawford's son will be made a eunuch.
Yeah. That's true. But that wasn't really a surprise. Like, we knew that was going to happen. Like, that's the plan for him, right?
I don't know if it was explicit before that he would be made a eunuch, but
Oh, my assumption was that's what it meant when they said, like, you're not going to be able to have a family. I just assumed that's what it was. So, but yeah, I guess you're right. They didn't explicitly say that. But yeah, he's, if he gets this like power and riches, etc.
But I feel like it's really interesting because we're given this, it's like half horror, you're taken away from your home and your culture and sent off into a foreign land, and you're going to be made a eunuch and like, never know your family and all this like horror stuff. But at the same time, you're like, oh, but you would have been like a unwanted bastard, and here you have the chance at riches and wealth and success and great education, and it's like kind of good but kind of really bad.
Or a family afterwards. So
yeah. Ooh.
Like I would fall on the side of bad here.
Yeah, I think bad.
Go ahead, Philippe, sorry.
Then he'll always be a servant. No matter how far he grows, he'll always be a servant under the emperor, or not emperor, but no, it is right. Sultan. The Sultan.
Yeah. 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 And then we get that bit about 4 ways to meet persecution from Kate. Ignore it, suffer it, do it better than they do, or just make them laugh.
I like that she chooses make them laugh.
Yeah.
This is the side that bites.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never gone to one of those Turkish baths where they like scrub you down. It sounds too painful in my opinion, but it's a super popular tourist thing to do in Constantinople.
It does sound super painful. Where
they beat you with the leaves as well.
But she does describe like feeling physical euphoria afterward, which I think is the idea. It's like if you do a really intense workout and you have like the euphoric feeling afterward. It's not really like deeply hurting you.
And you get seriously exfoliated.
Yeah, you get really clean.
really, really exfoliated.
Rubbed pink.
Yeah. And there's this, so Kazum comes back to her and it's just, he's sweet. And they have these such sweet moments together. And she's really trying to make him feel safe and protected. And like, here's all your new aunties. And like, they're just trying to make this very, very normal and it's okay. And then she says, but in her heart, she was saying, Carrot and Crawford, we are 2 people who may never know what it is to be a man or a woman, but we shall make friends and find happiness and comfort each other. And I almost cried at that point. Like I was reading the book and I was like, I got a little teary.
Yeah, at least they have each other in this strange foreign land until he's 11 and then they'll be separated forever.
Yeah, and she will be stuck there forever. And okay, any more thoughts on that? Okay, so then we go to this last section of the chapter, which is, or the last 2 sections, which is the boat trip with Gautier and Anafrin and Lymond sort of interacting on the boat. Lymond's wound has become infected, and that's a thing. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch about Anafrin here in his point of view, him sort of doing things like taking a diplomatic risk to confront Lymond, and doing, so kind of confronting him about how he's feeling about the death of Salamanca. What is kind of in Lymond's face?
Yeah, what is your take on if you think he's good versus if you think he's bad? Like, what is his goal here?
I mean, if he's good, I think he's genuinely trying to help, right? He's trying to like snap him out of this depression that he's in. He's got, he's saying things like bearing pain will not bring him back. you know, we need like this wound that is getting infected is like not helping anyone. Let's deal with it. He's sort of challenging Lymond in, you know, saying he could get shot down. Lymond could just get mad at him, and you know there could be consequences for that, but he risks it anyway. And if he's bad, he's sort of ingratiated himself into Lymond's life a lot further. So, I don't know. What do you think, Philippe?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know how to feel about him yet. So.
Why? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just confused.
Yeah.
Why has Lymond let it get this bad?
You mean the wound, the shoulder wound thing?
Yeah.
Because he's not sure who to trust.
Yeah, or he's punishing himself. Yeah.
There's an interesting part where I believe it is Onofrian thinking about what is going on with Lymond and thinking about how, you know, he's taken a year out of his life to perform a duty towards two young unknown children for whom one felt responsibility but no bond. To leave the live world, one's career, one's affairs, blah, blah, blah. Being forced to wait for an object one did not even desire except with one's intellect. To Mr. Crawford, the death of Sir Graham Reed Mallet was the justification for such a waste. Now he must feel the justification was indeed small. This is what Onofrian thinks is going on with Lymond. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to does Lymond love his son or not? And I think he does. Like, I don't think, like, he doesn't know this boy, but I don't think he has to meet him to love him, because he exists. And so, yeah.
There's a lot in here about Lymond's moods. Sorry?
I said I think people misjudge all the time. A line about his what?
There's a lot in here about Lymond's moods being unpredictable. And his, you know, like previously he'd been pushing everyone too hard, but like not so hard that they would turn against him. But now he's being more careless about it. You know, he's stalking up and down, he's all pale and messed up. And then when Onofrian takes him to like look at him, he very un-Lymond like sits down and puts his head in his arms and like lets Onofrian look at him. So I'm curious if like, is this all the wound? Is this an emotional reaction to Salablanca? Like this is sort of weird behavior from Lymond. Even when he's been injured before, he's always been super confident.
Yeah, I read it as an emotional reaction to the death of Salablanca. That it was an emotional reaction to the death of Salablanca, and that maybe the wound and the fever is heightening it a little bit. But I think the anger and the taking it out on people and the collapsing, you know, putting his head in his leg, I think all that is he's overwhelmed with guilt and sadness, and he couldn't fix it, and somebody else died. And yeah,
he also knows time is running out, that he has to get to Istanbul before the Sultan leaves, or he won't be able to negotiate to free Philippa and the child. So like that's a large portion of why he needs to rush.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to lose someone else.
Yeah,
because he already did lose Salablanca.
Yep. And so at the end of this section, Philippa sees the ship coming in, and she, I love how she's got this little spyglass that she traded like a Newcastle kerchief for a spyglass. That other person was an idiot, obviously. Yeah. But I love how she, you know, she starts crying when she sees the ship, and Kazum is like worried about her, and she lies and says she banged her hand. and he kisses it better, and it's just so sweet. And also it's such a Dunnett thing to like not tell us that she's crying because of the seeing, you know, the friendship with Lymond on it, but she's crying because but we're just told that she says that she hurt her hand, and we then can like extrapolate back and be like, oh, she must be crying.
Yeah.
Why else
And Kazum is like, is it better? It's so cute. Yeah. And then her thing is like, it's all better, or if it isn't, it doesn't matter a Dakin. And so just this idea, like either we will be saved and be okay, or that's it. Like that's our last. It doesn't matter. Like this is Lymond is her only chance, and if he fails, then she will be there forever, and so will he. And yeah,
we'll deal with it.
So Lymond arrives.
There's a couple more Istanbul references here. Another one to the domes and the minarets, and there's a reference to the aqueduct of Valens, which I will show you pictures of later.
Ooh. So they are in time. They have arrived. The Sultan has not left. And we do get these like Istanbul bits. And interestingly, we also get this little bit in Diarman's perspective where he's thinking about the Lymond that he saw in Malta, and then in what?
In Tripoli. Because when he saw him in Tripoli was when he was like dragged in from the escape attempt with Una and like passed out on the ground and all wet and beaten up.
Right. Yeah. And then he sees Lymond now, and they have this really interesting exchange where his concept of Lymond just completely flips from this like half-dead prisoner to someone who is actually incredibly savvy and politically aware, and he becomes very impressed with Lymond's understanding of the world and what needs to happen in Constantinople, and basically says, you've chosen a career for which you're decidedly suited. And you can just tell that Lymond's like, no.
But he would be a great ambassador. He knows.
He says, I can hold it. He would be fantastic, but he does not want to do that. So they have these discussions. They go on the walk around town, etc. So, thoughts on this section?
Get a lot of information sort of about what's going on with the Sultan, and that there may be a coup by his son. What was his son's name?
Mustafa. Prince
Mustafa?
Who is not Roxolana's son.
No, he is the son of one of his former wives.
Yep. So, yeah, and then Lymond tries to avoid saying that the boy in the harem is his son, but Anafrian lets that slip.
Meddling.
He doesn't let it slip. He like intentionally goes in and tells him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's like, by the way, here's the sitch. Yeah.
What is he doing there? What is his goal?
He's either in his own mind trying to help or hurt, and I can't figure out which one it is.
I don't understand how the French ambassador knowing that information makes a difference one way or the other, because the French ambassador is leaving. Like, Lymond's now the French ambassador, right? This guy's leaving, Lymond's taking his place. So is Lymond going to be the one who has all the interaction with the Sultan, or is this guy going to be along?
There is an implication
There's
that
the possibility that if the what? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there's an implication that the French ambassador thinks of him differently or treats him a little differently after he finds out, but we don't know in what way.
Yeah.
I think there's an implication that De Araman may still have some sort of communication with the Sultan. And if he tells the Sultan, oh, well, it's his son, that might make the negotiations more difficult. I don't know.
Maybe. But it might make them easier. Like, it might be more understandable that you want this kid. And like, so I just don't understand how the French ambassador having this information is either positive or negative. I'm sure it is. I'm sure Onofrian had a reason for doing that. I just don't know what it is.
I just see Onofrian sort of stepping out of his wheelhouse as like, you know, butler / cook. And sneaky. Whether it's sneaky for a good cause or not, I don't know.
Yeah. You're right.
Back to the
it is sneaky.
Back to the bit about Mustafa. The news about Mustafa is that he and the army were conspiring against Suleiman. And it's very, very secretive. Zahramon is like making sure nobody's listening. And then they're talking about, well, how did Suleiman hear about this? And I'm curious, like, what your take on that stuff is.
It's probably going to be important to the end of this book.
I mean, I wonder if, do we know, who's second in line for who's his second heir? Do we know who that is? It Roxolana's son? Do we know that?
Yeah, it would be
okay. So, because I could see something where she's conspiring to get the heir removed / killed / blamed for some sort of rebellion so that her son can be the next sultan. Like, that seems like a reasonable thing for this woman in power to want, particularly since if the sultan dies, like, her power base goes away because the new sultan is not her son, and he's gonna put his own mother or his wife or whatever in that position. So I can see her having done some stuff to get either to facilitate this rebellion so that this guy gets blamed, or make sure that the information about the rebellion got to the sultan, something like that. But who knows?
So they walk down the hill. The Galata Tower's on a hill. It's a very steep hill. Once I did it at 4 a.m. after going clubbing. At the top of the hill, that was fun. It was really actually very fun. It was like our hostel took us on a pub crawl, and it was not a crawl, it was a club, and we just went to this club and then stayed there on the rooftop until 4 a.m. and then walked back.
You didn't crawl anywhere.
You didn't crawl, no. Anyway, it was great, but yeah, so it is a very steep hill, but it's very interesting that D'Armon, he finds it invigorating, and Lymond is exhausted. What's going on?
Well, he's still got that wound, like he's just recovering from.
Yeah. Are there drugs involved? I don't know. I mean, yeah, Lymond is wounded. This guy is not. He's also significantly older. So
that shows how bad of a state Lymond is in.
Yeah.
And is it possible that, you know, in Onofrian's trying to fix this wound, he's drugging him or making him even worse? I don't know. I'm really getting behind this Onofrian as like this villain sort of thing, which I never really subscribed to before.
Oh, that's funny.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? The ambassador is like super proud of himself for being like physically fit, which is kind of funny. But yeah, and then he.
I was just say, it's very un-Lymond. His hands are trembling. He's restless. He's sparkling with sweat.
You know what he could be doing? Wait, does that make sense? Was he drugged before? Like, is he going through withdrawal? Like shaky hands, sweating. That would be interesting.
Possible.
Was he drugged when he was at the they were all kind of drugged a little bit when they were at the place with Kiaya Khatum and Aga Marat, and I forgot the name of it. The place where they were held in prison.
Daraba.
They all kind of sort of drugged a bit there. Am I imagining that? I don't know.
We're given alcohol.
So if someone is drugging him, okay. If someone was drugging him and he's going through a withdrawal,
It's a possibility. That would explain some of the symptoms.
yeah, but who would it would be somebody who was doing it and then left, but the only person who's left is Salablanca, and I don't think he's been drugging Lymond. Maybe Mikhail did something, or Onofrian just decided to stop if he's been doing it. Gautier?
Marta, even though she's not.
Marta! But wouldn't symptoms have shown up
Yeah.
before now?
I don't know.
I don't know. Because, yeah, he's low energy. He's sweating. His hands are shaking, like tremors.
I think it still could just be after effects of
The wound.
stabbed in the shoulder. And I mean, Zitzwitz, when he fixed it, says, oh, this wound is poisoned, which makes you think it was infection, but maybe he was literally poisoned. Maybe there was some sort of poison on the...
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he was poisoned.
A very slow working poison, because this is several days later now.
Yeah. Okay. So then we find out there will be a ceremony on Tuesday. Yeah, and Diarmand's worried that Tuesday's ceremony might be too much for him, which makes me a little concerned about what the ceremony is on Tuesday. Like, if there's the possibility that it will be too much.
So I think the reason he says that Lymond is going to be okay for the thing on Tuesday is because he's just explained, Onofrian has just explained that he's injured. So that's why the ambassador is asking if he'll be okay.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if like the ceremony on Tuesday was going to involve some sort of physical thing that he would be required to do, or like somehow his injury would be problematic for the thing. I don't know.
I think it's just the introduction of him as the new ambassador, and also when Lymond's going to be like, oh, by the way, there's these two people in your seraglio that I would like to buy, please.
Yeah.
Can I have them back?
Can I have them?
They really shouldn't have been there. And it's true, they really shouldn't be there, but...
So yeah, these children of tribute are as legit as any other slaves. I mean, they're taking slaves. So what's the difference between Philippe and Kuzum versus any other slave that they're taking? Like, how do you determine whether it's legit or not? Look at all the people that they kidnapped from Gozo.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Who knows what's gonna happen next? We got a ceremony.
Yeah, so what do you think is going to happen next, and what do you hope for? Or should I not ask?
Well, we're all going to converge on Constantinople, all of the disparate parties. I mean, Lymond and his group are already there. Obviously, Philippa's there, so we're just waiting on Jarrett and Marta now. But Lymond will figure out some way to get Philippa out and the child. And we still actually know that the other child is in the House of the Nightingale, but nobody has found him yet since they left Mahedia. So,
and I know it's probably going to be all about, like diplomacy, and they're going to do all this diplomacy and stuff and blah, blah, blah. But there's a part of me that really wants to have like a heist where like they sneak into the palace and like get Philippa baby, like sneak out again, and like I'm sure that's not gonna happen, but
and we know that Gabriel's gotta rear his ugly head up again at some point.
Hey,
he'll be back.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that, because he's like the Pasha something or other at Aleppo. Is that where he is now?
They made him the new Aga at Zwara or something.
Zwara, yeah, not Aleppo, yeah, Zwara, yeah. Like, yeah, he's got to come into it.
Somehow. He's already consolidating power in wherever he is in Zwara. That's not Turkey. That's on the African coast, but it's part of the Ottoman Empire. So
maybe he's conspiring with the sun.
It's possible. Maybe he is the sun.
No.
Maybe he replaced him. I wouldn't put past Gabriel.
anything, I don't know. I ask the same questions every time. What do you want to happen to this character when you become that character? Anything sticking in your head that you think is interesting to share?
I'm just enjoying the story unfolding. Like
Yeah.
the story's been unfolding more and more. It's getting consolidated. Like I'm just looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next. Like I don't know what's going to happen next, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next. So.
I'm just interested to find out who everybody is working for and which side everybody is sort of aligning with. Because you've got this weird question about Gautier and Marta now. Like, where does Guzelle sit? Like, who's she working for? It's all just like who's Gabriel manipulating or not.
How far a reach does the Dame de Chance have? Like, what is that? Yeah, I agree. That's the thing I want to know the most is who is on whose side? What are the motivations of these mysterious people? Mostly, number one, Marta. Like, what are her motivations is the number one character I want to learn about. Yeah.
All right, well, do you want to see some photos of Istanbul?
Yes, please.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. All right, you see it?
See a big group. The Dunnett siege of Constantinople. Oh boy.
Wow, that's a group.
That is.
Yes.
Oh my
There's
God.
a lot of us. There's me up there.
Okay.
You look like one of the younger people.
I was just saying, what was the average age of this group?
I
love it.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I went with them to Paris in 2009, I think, and it was 2012. But yeah, it was awesome.
This looks so fun. I'm so jealous.
It was cool.
Oh.
And I think this is like the old city wall. I think that's what that is, but I don't know for sure. So I'll just skim through some photos to give you an idea of the place, if that's all right. Here we are. I think we were at Top Coffee here, and we're drinking like sherbet. It's like a sweet, super sweet drink. It's not iced the way that we think of it now. It's just like a really, really sweet liquid, and it'll be like pomegranate or rose or that kind of flavor.
Ooh, yummy.
This is looking from the old city area on the south north towards, that's the Galata Tower, and that's the area called like Pera and Galata, the European side.
The steep hill you have to climb, right?
Yeah, and the hill goes up to there. Yep. This is the Hagia Sophia. I apologize, my photos are going to be out of order because there's some from 2012 and then there's some from when I went back in 2015. But we can just look. This is Hagia Sophia. That's an angel. They look really creepy. They're covered in feathers. This is, you can see the history of it. It was a mosque. And so they left up like the signs that it was a mosque and the signs that it was a church. Although now it's a mosque again, so I don't know what it's like. This I thought was super cool because it's so old. I think it's the 6th century. The way our tour guide explained this to me, because it's like a pagan kind of symbol, like a Greek or Roman mythology, was like at the time Christianity was new and they were trying to lure people in, so they put things that they would recognize in the church. Like,
hey, Poseidon is here.
Yes. I don't think you would put that in a church now, but it's pretty cool. Here's just more images of it. You can see it's absolutely huge. It's amazing that they built it so long ago, right? You can see how people would think it was like a miracle. These are from a later era. I think they're like 1200s, but they obviously look very like Byzantine, what we think of Byzantine.
I love a later era, the 1200s.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, lots of this just beautiful imagery of this place. Wow. Okay, this is the Archaeological Museum, and I just cracked up at this sign because apparently I assume from this sign that people come to the Archaeological Museum trying to get into Top Coffee so often that they have a sign saying it's not Top Coffee. But the Archaeological Museum is just amazing. There's all of this incredible like Greek and Roman art. This one reminded me of Marta with the Cupids. But yeah, I mean, just some like the coolest art I've ever seen. This is a bit of the old chain, which is referenced in the book, and you can see like where it was. So I guess before the Turks attacked the Greeks or the Roman Empire, or whatever they were by the end, had a chain there to like protect it. And there's a whole thing about the golden horn chain. This was from the talk. So there's a whole bunch of talks every night, like about the book and about the Lymond era, and this picture cracked me up. But everything had like PowerPoint slides, and people would talk about the Lymond books and have like photographs to make it entertaining.
Did you give a presentation?
I did not give it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's it called? The Aqueduct of Valens. This is like a tour bus, and you drive through the Aqueduct of Valens. So this tall thing is an aqueduct where they're bringing water into the city.
Wow.
That's another shot of it from a distance. And this was from the early days of when it was Roman. This is one of the mosques. I forget which one, but you can see the minarets and like the dome, like that. The skyline is all over that. And then this was a cat, because there's cats everywhere in Istanbul, and in all the tourist sites they hang out and make friends. This is inside the mosque, very beautiful. This was these like Dunnett siege headscarves that we all got so we could go into the mosque. This is the Galata Tower walking up the hill. This is the view from the tower looking out at the water, and then the old city on the other side, I think. This is inside the top of the tower. We had this whole lunch, like we booked the whole thing for the Lymond event and had a meal. This is more of the old chain. This is in a different museum. I think it's the military museum. This is, I think, an old fort and or parts of the old city wall. This is the Panorama 1453 museum, which is just this entire museum of when the Turks took the city. And it's just a panorama like that people stand in, and like this whole thing plays out around you of the battle where they took the city. And then yeah, super dramatic. And this is like, you can see this is like the old wall and what it looked like. And it's still there. And then this is like a mini replica of the Panorama Museum that's inside of the Panorama Museum.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's fun. And then you have this actual like, oh, that sure looks like pictures. It's still there. Here's more of the Lymond talks I just thought was entertaining. Drama and a laugh at the same time. Quest and comedy
And fun and frankincense.
This is super blurry, but I think it was actually tracing the routes that everyone takes throughout this book. I wish I had it like, yeah, because you see there's like labeled Jarrett and Marta.
Yep.
So
there's Philippe up top.
Oh yeah, Philippe, yep. And then this is Archie. Yeah.
You've shown us that portrait before.
That picture.
Yeah. Here's another view just looking out at the Galata Tower. Turkish delight. So Philippa sends Kate a recipe to make Turkish delight. Turkish delight is everywhere. It's all the places that are like marketed toward tourists. They're trying to get you to buy Turkish delight. It's usually vegan also, unless it's made with honey, but it isn't always. This is in like Pera or Galata, the European side. There's all these embassies there, and I took this picture because this was like a guard at one of the embassies, and he was playing with like 5 different cats. And it was just super entertaining, and you can see this is one of the cats who was just hanging out. Like, they're so friendly. Galata Tower at night, and you can see at the bottom like all the people hanging out. Like, this is where like the young people hang out and party and chill. This is a TV show. It's like a Turkish soap opera called
I have watched this show.
Okay, yeah.
I have totally watched this show. I'm like 15 episodes into it. I need to go back to it.
So yeah, so it's about this era, and it's about Suleiman and Roxolana, and how Roxolana goes from slave girl to being the wife of the Sultan and the most powerful person.
Yeah, in the part where I am right now, she's the tutor for his children, and she's teaching them, like, she's a language tutor.
It's so funny that you're watching it. Okay, so this I think is this is like the way into Topkapi. So there's all these like courtyards going into Topkapi. And I think this is the outer one. I think it's been a while. And here
would that be where there were like screens on the like where they were going in and like everything was like shielded?
Maybe, but I think they went in a different way. I think this is like the entry from the land side, and since they took a boat,
Oh, right.
one of the other
Yeah.
entrances. Here's like a little model of Top Copy. You can just kind of see how big it is.
Okay, so they would have landed like in the corner here.
Wow, it's gigantic.
It's huge, yeah.
Wow.
And here's the entrance to the harem. And the walls are covered in this beautiful, beautiful tile. So this is just some shots of what it's like inside. And this is described in the book, all these courtyards and beautiful decor. And then this is just some of the views. Oh, here's when I went with Cameron and Amy. More beautiful views. These are for the 2012 pictures, 2015 pictures, so the camera was better. Here's when I'm drinking Turkish coffee at the Harem in Top Coffee. It's very strong, and it does have the silt at the bottom.
Wow.
Okay, so then this is the later trip. This is more of Hagia Sophia. Us at Hagia Sophia. And then if I go back to the top, there's a few more. Oh, this is our guide from 2012. I think this was, this is when he was taking us into the Hagia Sophia. So he's showing us pictures. We sort of like, because there's so many of us in that big picture, we divvied up in groups. And this was the guide for our group, although he had not read the book, which was disappointing. Here's me at Top Copy. You can see like the view is beautiful. And then there's all these tulips when I was there that time of year, and you see how they're spiky. So like I was always wondering about the spiky tulips in the tile art. They really have spiky tulips. This is inside Top Copy, and you can see all the tulips outside, but I feel like there's lots of descriptions of these like kiosks with these lounging areas, and so this kind of stood out.
You're still there.
Yeah. And then just more beautiful views from Top Copy. Here's me and Amy.
Ooh.
Isn't that pretty?
What a fountain.
That's really beautiful.
Here's us at the Hagia Sophia and the angels on all the different sides of us.
Oh, wow.
More Top Copy. Top Copy.
Jeez. How long does a tour take of Top Copy Palace?
I don't think we had a guided tour. We just wandered around. So of course we were there for hours and hours and hours.
I would totally do that.
And then they had this whole exhibition about Turkish coffee, 500 years of Turkish coffee, which was super entertaining, and all these pictures of like coffee houses and how they were where like, people hung out and had their like edgy communications. The dark object of pleasure. Old Turkish coffee set. So you can just see Kiaya Hatun drinking out of this.
Yeah.
An ancient coffee cup. And there's back to my Turkish coffee. Oh, and there's Turkish Delight on the side there. It's a little here we are at Top Copy drinking Turkish coffee. Hagia Sophia. Galata Spice Shop. I just took this picture because one, you see how the markets are like, all spices, and this is the Galata, which is in the book. And that's it.
Yay! That looks like such a fun trip.
Yeah, that looked awesome.
Very fun. I'll have more. I have a couple more pictures in future ones where we go to like specific places and I have a picture of that thing, but this was like the most pictures that I got together.
That's so cool. I want to go places with Lymond people. Talk about
go places in general.
I want to go places.
I want to go places.
I want to go to the border between Scotland and England and go to like Hexham Abbey, where that amazing scene in Game of Kings is. Like, so
imagine maybe by the time we are in books 5 or 6, we could just set up a camera in one of our living rooms, and the three of us could be in the same place and talk.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
It would be a miracle.
I know.
Maybe the 6th book. Maybe we'll be there.
Oh man, maybe.
You never know. Yeah, this is a good quarantine activity. All right. Anything else you guys want to add about these chapters or the rest of the book that you're hoping?
It's been good.
Yeah, I think the excitement's gonna ramp up again now, from now to the end, because we're getting towards that end bit. So
I feel like the political pressure is starting to ramp up, and who knows what's gonna happen?
Lots of dominoes all set up.
Yeah. Who's gonna knock him down? Gabriel.
Lyman. Madame Debutantes. She's gonna come flying in on her broom and crystal ball.
Tulip's gonna knock him down.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.